All right, hey everyone, ready for a deep dive. Today we're tackling scapegoating. We've got this essay really digs into why we as humans, why we love to point the finger, and even more importantly, how we can, maybe break that habit.
The thing that really struck me about this essay was, well, it doesn't just scratch the surface. It goes deep, like way back, all the way to the book of Leviticus, to really get at the origins of that term, scapegoat.
Yeah, I got to admit, I was surprised too, learning that the word, it actually comes from this ancient ritual. They'd literally load a goat up, like with all the sins of the community, and just send it off into the wilderness. We're talking about passing the buck, right?
It's a really vivid image, isn't it? And it gets right to the heart of it, of scapegoating. It's about, shifting that blame to something or someone else, just so we don't have to deal with our own stuff. But this essay, it goes beyond that, beyond ancient history. It shows how scapegoating, it weaves its way through time, pops up in the most, surprising places.
Like, you mean like during the Black Death? The essay mentions how Jewish communities, they were targeted back then, accused of actually causing the plague. It's really a stark reminder how fear and uncertainty, they make people look for someone to blame, even when it just doesn't make sense.
Exactly. And the thing is, this isn't just some medieval thing, The essay connects those historical dots, brings it right into modern-day psychology. It highlights how individuals, even entire societies, they use scapegoating to just to cope with stress.
So are we saying that, like, anytime someone starts ranting about those people causing all the problems, that's scapegoating?
Well, it's not always so clear-cut, But the essay, it does point out the scapegoating. It often involves oversimplifying these complex issues and targeting groups based on prejudice or stereotypes. Just think about economic downturns. How often do we see immigrants blamed for job losses, even though the reality is way more complicated?
That's a really good point. It's like people need that simple target for their anger, their frustration, instead of actually grappling with the messiness of real world problems,
Yeah.
But the essay also, it delves into the psychology of why we scapegoat on an individual level, right?
Right, exactly. It brings in Freud's theory of projection, which basically suggests that that sometimes we deal with our own flaws or insecurities by attributing them to others. So instead of facing our own shortcomings, we project them outwards. We blame someone else for our problems.
So let me get this straight. If I'm feeling insecure about, let's say, my own work performance, I might be more likely to criticize a colleague's work.
Yeah.
Just to make myself feel a bit better. That's kind of sneaky, isn't it?
It can be, yeah. And the thing is, a lot of times we're not even aware that we're doing it. The essay, it points out that projection, it can be this powerful unconscious thing, a way of protecting our ego, But the problem is it doesn't fix the underlying issue.
Yeah. It's like sweeping dirt under the rug, right? Instead of actually cleaning it up, you might feel better for a minute, but that mess, it's still there.
Mm-hmm.
This essay, it really makes you think twice about how we interact with others. Could we all be walking around projecting our own anxieties onto each other and just not even realize it?
It's definitely a possibility worth thinking about. And it's not just about individual interactions either. The essay argues that projection, it can happen on a bigger scale too, with groups projecting their fears, their insecurities onto other groups, and that's where things can get really, really dangerous. It feeds into prejudice and discrimination and all sorts of things.
Like how certain political groups, they might demonize their opponents, attributing all kinds of negative things to them without any real evidence. It's almost as if they're projecting their own fears, their own anxieties onto the other, just to justify their own actions.
Precisely. And the essay, it makes it clear, this kind of group projection, it can be incredibly, incredibly powerful. It fuels conflict and division within society. It's a real reminder that scapegoating, it's not just some harmless quirk. It can have real consequences in the real world.
So we've gone from ancient rituals to modern psychology and even into politics. This essay is really connecting the dots across all these different parts of the human experience.
It really is. And it's not just about understanding the problem either. The essay, it offers some potential solutions too, for how we can break free from these scapegoating tendencies, both individually and collectively.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely ready for some good news now.
Well, it's not a quick fix, but the essay, essay, it really emphasizes the importance of self-awareness and critical thinking as really crucial steps, you know?
Yeah.
It argues that we need to be willing to examine our own biases and question our own assumptions before we start pointing fingers at other people.
That's easier said than done, though, isn't it? I mean, sometimes it feels like our brains are just, they're wired to look for simple explanations and easy targets to blame.
You're right. It's not easy, but the essay suggests that by developing our capacity for empathy and compassion, we can start to chip away at those deeply ingrained habits.
Empathy. So that's about putting ourselves in someone else's shoes.
Yeah.
Trying to understand their experiences, their perspectives, even if we don't agree with them.
Exactly. It's about recognizing our shared humanity, even when it's tough. The essay suggests that empathy, it can be this powerful thing. It's like an antidote to scapegoating. It allows us to see beyond those simple narratives and really acknowledge the complexity of being human.
Yeah.
And it's not just about individual change either. You know, the essay, it makes this really compelling case for addressing scapegoating on a societal level, especially now in the age of social media.
Oh, that's a great point. It really does feel like social media can be a breeding ground for scapegoating, you know. I mean, the algorithms, they often prioritize content that triggers like strong emotions.
Yeah.
And that can lead to the spread of misinformation and these divisive narratives.
Exactly. The essay, it talks about how politicians and media outlets, they can actually exploit these dynamics. They use scapegoating as a tool to gain power or influence. They might target vulnerable groups, amplifying existing prejudices, just to distract from more complex issues, or to consolidate their own support base.
It's like this dangerous feedback loop, isn't it? Where fear and outrage, they generate clicks and engagement, which just further incentivizes the spread of these harmful narratives.
Yeah.
It can feel, I don't know, it can feel overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially when these messages are just constantly bombarding us from all directions.
Yeah.
But the essay, it doesn't just leave us feeling helpless, does it?
No, not at all. It really emphasizes the importance of media literacy and critical thinking, particularly online. You know, we need to be aware of the ways in which information can be manipulated and develop those skills to identify bias, to evaluate sources and to seek out those diverse perspectives.
So it's not about avoiding social media altogether, but rather about becoming more savvy.
Yeah.
You know, more savvy consumers of information. We need to be aware of those algorithms, the ones that are shaping our feeds.
Yeah.
And to actively seek out alternative viewpoints.
Precisely. The essay, it encourages us to be active participants, you know, in the online landscape, to engage in thoughtful discussions, to fact check information, and to challenge those harmful narratives when we encounter them. It's about reclaiming our agency and using our voices to promote understanding and compassion, even in the face of all that division and outrage.
Yeah, that makes sense. But the essay also acknowledges that media literacy, it's not a silver bullet, is it? I mean, we need to address those societal issues, the ones that make scapegoating so appealing in the first place.
Absolutely. The essay, it argues that scapegoating, it thrives in environments of inequality and injustice. When people are struggling economically or they feel like their voices aren't being heard, they might be more susceptible, you know, to those simplistic explanations and those easy targets for blame.
So are we saying that if we just create a more just and equitable society, that scapegoating will just disappear?
Well, it's not quite that simple, but the essay, it does suggest that addressing those systemic issues, things like poverty, discrimination, lack of access to opportunity, all of that can help to create a more inclusive and resilient society, you know, a society where people are less likely to fall prey to those scapegoating tactics.
That makes sense, yeah. If people feel like they have a stake in society and that their voices matter, they're less likely to be drawn to that divisive rhetoric, the kind that pits them against against others.
Exactly. It's about creating that sense of shared purpose and solidarity, where people from different backgrounds and different beliefs, they can come together to solve them collectively rather than turning on each other.
So it's a multifaceted approach then. It involves individual change, media literacy, and addressing those systemic issues.
Precisely. The essay, it doesn't offer any easy answers, but it does provide a framework for understanding the complex dynamics of scapegoating and for working towards a future where it plays a less dominant role in our lives.
The essay also spends some time discussing the role of leadership in combating scapegoating.
Yes, that's a key point. The essay, it argues that leaders, they have a responsibility, to set a positive example, to promote inclusive language, and to challenge those harmful narratives when they arise.
So it's not just about what leaders do, but also about what they say and how they communicate. They have this platform to shape public discourse and to set a tone of respect and understanding.
Exactly. And the essay, it points out that this is particularly important in times of crisis or uncertainty, when people are more likely to look to leaders for guidance and reassurance.
It's like saying leaders don't exploit people's fears and anxieties for your own gain. Instead, use your position to foster unity and compassion and a sense of shared purpose.
That's a powerful message, and it's a reminder that we all have a role to play in holding leaders, holding them accountable for the language that they use and the actions that they take.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of heavy stuff today, from ancient rituals to the dark side of social media and the responsibility of leadership. This essay, it really dives deep into the heart of what makes us human, both the good and the bad.
It definitely has. It's been a very, very thought-provoking exploration. But the essay, it doesn't leave us in a state of despair. It reminds us that we have the power to choose a different path, to resist that urge to scapegoat, and to build a more compassionate and just world.
It's saying, hey, we're all flawed. We all make mistakes, but we can learn from the past. We can choose to be better, and we can work together to create a future where scapegoating is no longer that default response to our challenges.
I love that. It's a message of hope and empowerment, reminding us that change is possible, but it requires conscious effort and a commitment to working together.
This essay, it's given us a lot to chew on. It's like a crash course in understanding the dark side of human nature, but also a guidebook for how we can move towards a brighter future.
I couldn't agree more.
But before we wrap up this deep dive, I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned earlier about self-awareness and how projection can play a role in scapegoating. The essay touched on this briefly, but I think it's worth exploring a bit further.
I agree. Understanding our own internal biases and tendencies, it's crucial, if we want to break free from these harmful patterns of behavior.
The essay mentions that self-reflection can be a powerful tool for uncovering those hidden biases. But how do we actually do that? It seems like our brains are pretty good at rationalizing our own behavior, even when it's not justified.
You're right. It's not easy to be truly honest with ourselves, especially when it comes to recognizing our own flaws and biases. But the essay suggests that certain practices, things like mindfulness, journaling, and seeking feedback from trusted sources, all of that can help us to cultivate a greater sense of self-awareness.
So it's about creating space for introspection, for really paying attention to our thoughts, our feelings, our behaviors without judgment.
Exactly. It's about developing a curious and compassionate attitude towards ourselves, recognizing that we're all works in progress, and that we all have the capacity to grow and evolve.
The essay also mentions that therapy can be a valuable valuable resource for exploring those deeper patterns and for developing healthier coping mechanisms.
Absolutely, absolutely. Having a trained professional to guide us through that process of self-discovery, it can be incredibly helpful, especially if we're struggling with those deeply ingrained patterns of behavior, or if we're just feeling stuck in a cycle of blame and resentment.
It's like having a coach,
Yeah.
in the game of life.
Yeah.
Helping us to identify our blind spots and to develop the skills we need to navigate those tricky emotional landscapes.
That's a great analogy, and it's a reminder that we don't have to go through this journey of self-discovery alone. There are resources available to support us, whether it's a therapist, a trusted friend, or even a supportive online community.
So even though this deep dive has taken us into some pretty dark territory, it's ultimately a message of hope and empowerment. We're not just victims of our own biology or our social conditioning. We have the capacity to change, to evolve, and to choose a different path.
Absolutely, and it starts with that willingness to look inward, to examine our own biases, and to cultivate greater empathy and compassion for ourselves and for others.
We've been really digging into this essay on scapegoating, and it's pretty clear that understanding our own biases, that's key, right? The essay, it doesn't just stop at individual introspection, does it? It tackles those broader societal structures, the ones that really fuel this whole blame game.
You're absolutely right. It argues that we can't ignore those root causes, those things like inequality and injustice, that often they create the perfect conditions for scapegoating to take hold.
So are we saying that if we're constantly bombarded with messages that reinforce stereotypes or pit one group against another, that it just becomes easier to fall into those scapegoating patterns?
Exactly. The essay, it points out that media, political rhetoric, even our education systems, they can all play a part in shaping how we see other people. And if those systems are full of bias, well, it becomes so much harder to see each other as complex individuals, individuals with shared experiences.
Right. It's like we're all swimming in this sea of unconscious bias, and it takes real effort to break free and see things from a fresh perspective. But the essay, it doesn't just leave us treading water, does it? It offers some life rafts, so to speak, for how we can create a more just and equitable society.
It does. It emphasizes that need for systemic change, for challenging those in positions of power to really dismantle those discriminatory practices and create more inclusive policies. This could involve, well, everything really, from addressing economic disparities to reforming our criminal justice system.
So it's not just about individual good intentions, but about creating a society where those good intentions are actually supported by the structures around us. That makes sense. Yeah. But are there specific examples in the essay of what this systemic change might actually look like in practice? I mean,
there are. For example, the essay talks about the importance of representation in media and politics. When we see diverse voices and diverse perspectives reflected in the stories that we consume, the leaders who represent us, it helps to break down those harmful stereotypes, the ones that fuel scapegoating.
It's like saying, hey, we need to see ourselves reflected in the world around us. To feel that sense of belonging and to understand that our experiences, that they're valid. But representation alone, that's not enough, is it? We also need to address those deeper, those economic and social inequalities, the ones that create division and resentment in the first place.
Absolutely. The essay talks about creating a more equitable distribution of resources, ensuring that everyone has access to quality education, to healthcare, to economic opportunity. When people feel like they have a fair shot at a good life, they're less likely to be drawn to those narratives that pit them against others.
It's about creating a society where everyone feels valued and respected, regardless of their background or their circumstances. Oh. But how do we actually make this happen? It feels like such a huge undertaking. especially when there's so much resistance to change.
It is a monumental task, but the essay, it reminds us that throughout history, social progress, it's been driven by collective action. It's about ordinary people coming together to demand a better world, to hold their leaders accountable, and to build those movements for change.
So it's not about waiting for someone else to fix things, but about each of us taking responsibility for creating the world that we want to live in.
Exactly. And that starts with those small acts, small acts of courage and compassion, speaking out against injustice, supporting organizations that are working for change, and having those difficult conversations with family and friends who might be, clinging to those outdated beliefs.
This essay, it really makes you realize that scapegoating, it's not just some abstract concept. It's something that affects all of us, whether we're the target or the perpetrator. And it takes a conscious effort at both the individual and the societal level to break free from those patterns.
Well said. It's a reminder that building a more just and compassionate world, it's an ongoing process, and it requires all of us to show up, to do the work, and to never stop pushing for progress.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from the ancient origins of scapegoating to the complex psychological and societal forces that keep it alive today. And most importantly, the steps that we can take to challenge it.
It's been a truly insightful journey, and I hope our listeners are leaving with a renewed sense of awareness and a commitment to creating a world where scapegoating it no longer holds sway.
Me too. Mm-hmm. A huge thank you to you for your brilliant insights, and of course to you, our amazing listeners, for joining us on this deep dive. Remember, the fight against scapegoating, it starts with each of us. Let's choose empathy over blame, understanding over division, and action over apathy. Together we can create a world where everyone feels safe and respected and valued.
Until next time, keep learning, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.